So at this point, I was at the liberty of this child, and so then my old director looks at her.
I remember this moment,
right, and says, "Yes," and she said,
"No."
She said, "Were you the band director that Mr. Pratt was mean to and talked about behind his back?"
And let me tell you what.
I think
he turned colors. All types of red. All types of red. Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Mosley.
And I'm Chris Pratt, and this is episode 3 of the Teach Bigger podcast, Enjoying the Journey. So, hey, we want to say thank you for taking the time to listen today, and we are so excited about today's episode.
Oh, yes, we are. We're going to have a blast today because we're going to share some of our stories that have shaped our journey. So today is all about enjoying the journey.
Okay, so we think it's so important to find humor and fun in everything you do.
Yes.
So, teaching kids, there's a lot of funny stuff that goes on. Mm-hmm. And, you have to come to work every day and expect the unexpected, because I promise today something's going to happen.
And you know what? I think that is one thing that is exciting about our field is that you go to work every day and you can't predict how your day is going to go,
Right.
You can plan for something, but your day's always going to be different. A kid is going to do something. A situation is going to be, different. The fire drill is going to go off or something,
Right.
So it's unpredictable. So that will make our field exciting. But
yeah. And, there are so many people who come to work and they're so stuffy and they're so academic and they're so content. We have to teach the children.
Curriculum.
Exactly. And that's fine. Look, we have to teach the children. That's good.
Do.
But if you can't take a breath and enjoy what's going on and have fun and laugh at the things that are funny.
Right. And, sometimes you don't laugh right then, because I know a lot of these situations that I will probably tell you about. I didn't laugh while it was going on because I was trying not to cry. But I think it's important to look back and then you can laugh and say, I know why I went through this, because it just made me stronger, made me better, and whatever,
Right. And, I think with experience and the different things that happen that are crazy, it teaches us a lot of lessons along the way. And that's what makes us a better and better teacher. Mm-hmm. So, hey, look, part of the teach bigger mentality is you're going to have to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, definitely enjoying the journey. Yeah.
All right, so we're just going to take today, and we're going to be laid back, and it's all about you just hearing some of our stories, craziness,
all of the good and bad and in between.
And so, I'm sure you'll be able to relate. And hey, look, if you want to email us and tell us some of your crazy stories, we want to hear them too.
We would love to hear that too. So don't judge, just sit back and you can kind of hear some of the things that we've gone through. And, a lot of these things have shaped the way we think now. So as you're going through things, understand it's shaping you. So that's what makes you enjoy it. So
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So I guess I'll start first. So here's one of the stories, and, I don't have to think too hard about these. These things kind of just stick with me. So this is my personal opinion. So I don't mean to offend anybody or administration or anything like that. But so we have this thing called duty, right? And every time we say that, the kids just laugh.
Right. And it's, it's very appropriately named that.
Right, duty. Right. And so you have to stand on the corner and, observe kids, or you have to go to the cafeteria or whatever. And me personally, I just don't like it. And I really didn't like it when I was in middle school, because it's really like herding cats, right? And it's early in the morning. And the kids are just coming in. It's just really
so it's
not
like
fun.
7:00 in the morning, 6:30, whatever. And the first thing you have to do is go wrangle them.
Wrangle them in, go through this line here. Come on. Don't sit here and talk. Come on. Let's go get your breakfast. Come in. Go in the gym. Sit in row 3. Come on.
Right.
So my first 2 years, we had to do duty. And the thing with this was, they had these things called PLCs, professional learning communities. I think that was right.
Yeah.
And so all the content areas, they would get together and they would meet. And so the fine arts and electives department, which was I think at the school 11 people, we would be responsible for duty that day, so they can meet and whatever and plan and whatever, strategize. So those 11 teachers had to be responsible, for maybe 1,400 kids.
Right.
And they had to get them in there, make sure they're in the uniform, get them breakfast. Then the kids that are not going to like be in the breakfast areas, get them to the gym and they're just going to sit. Right. And so that's idle time for the kids. So you have to make sure they were not throwing things and whatever.
You know, really, it's a good thing that the children are at the cognitive age that they are, because if you think about it, 1,300 to 11,
right? Exactly.
You're severely outnumbered.
Like
one kid with a sign that decided to revolt, there's nothing you could do.
And so that I always felt like there was going to be a big revolt. And you know, the kids at that school, they were really nice individually, but in mass groups, they were mob mentality. So I almost felt like a bouncer. And I would always like look around, make sure no one's throwing things at me and no one's going to come behind me and try to jump me and stuff like that. That's how I felt. Anyway, so one time specifically, like we did a really good job of making sure that went well. And, you know, we had a specific way logistically to make sure they came in, get them in, don't let big groups line up, you know, mob and stuff like that, get them in and out or whatever. So anyway, this one time, okay, we were in breakfast and we were on duty. And there was this food fight at breakfast. At breakfast. And the kids, and everybody was throwing things, and the cafeteria it sat down in like this pit. So like you had to go down into the pit area, right? And so it was stuff everywhere. And thank the Lord that I was out of the way, like I was by the line, not in the area. So no one was like, you know, in middle school kids, it only lasts so long, right? So it was like maybe, 15 seconds. But anyway, so the entire school was pretty much in there. And then the kids that were in the gym, you know, they wanted to come out and see what's going on. So we closed the gym doors and whatever. So all the kids had like gotten outside of the pit area, and there was just milk and breakfast, you know, sandwiches and everything, right? And so the whole school was just standing still, and our principal came out and he's like, "Give me the microphone," you know, and we're like, "Okay, good luck," because he's a shorter guy, you know, and he's give me the microphone. So he takes the microphone and he's like, "Young scholars and ladies and gentlemen," you know, and they all start to cough. Right, you know, because that's what middle school kids do, you know. Yeah, they start to do that, right? And so he does this, and this was like a really great move, and I really admire. He's like, "Teachers," because the teachers were in there by that time, because he called all the teachers who were in their meeting to say, "Hey, come down here. Our school is like they're
taking over. They're taking over.
Code 10, code 10." And so, you know, so we're all standing there. All the teachers come in, and like we know what's going on, and there's like, you know, chocolate milk everywhere, and he's standing in the middle of the pit with the microphone, you know, and he's like, "This is not how we behave, you know, da, 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 da. People view us like this, you know," and they start to cough. And he's like, "Teachers, anyone who's coughing, send them down here." So I start to grab kids. Oh, come on, you know, y'all want to be big and bad, you know, and then that stopped it there, you know. And so at that moment, you know, he got control back of everything that was going on. But, you know, from that point, things had to be cut, you know, and, very strategic about logistics and things like that, you know, about behavior. But that was a big moment. Like that could have been even worse than it was, but he made those kids clean up. So they cleaned up the stuff, and then, you know, we got them back in, you know, into class. But, that was the moment there that I, you know, as a new teacher, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we were trying to avoid. And then it happened. But, you know, we made it through, and I don't think there was another food fight,
right.
but yeah. We still hated duty, right. And even as a high school teacher, I hated it too. So there you go. That's my food fight story. But yeah,
and you know, you have to look back at that, and you can't be mad about it.
Yeah, you can't.
You got to fix the culture.
Like middle school kids, you don't say, okay, this is dangerous, and you know, I'm endangering the lives of my fellow, you know, classmates or whatever because I'm going to throw this milk carton and try to, you know, you don't think like that because you're a middle school kid. Because I remember, you know, food fights when we were in school. I would try to hide under the table so I wouldn't get hit. You know, but you don't think it's just fun, you know. And so teachers, you know, we had to stop that mentality to change the culture. So, you
know, having taught 14 years, we've got a lot of journeys. We've got a lot of stories, and a couple of things have stuck out to me. So at the current place I'm a high school band director, and before that I'd always taught middle school. And so I got thrown into the whole marching band world, and outdoor rehearsals, and that's just a whole different element because usually you're in your classroom and everything's normal, and now all of a sudden I have a outdoor classroom where there's everything from cars that get in the way,
elements of
the elements of the weather. It's all there. So I think one of my most memorable moments that has really kind of shaped my journey, because I'm very rigid when it comes to the way I run my classroom.
What do you mean rigid?
Well, we have fun.
Tell us about.
But I have a lot of structure. Okay, I have a lot of structure, and I don't want a kid's hair to be out of place on their head. It's got to be the right place, and it's like when I'm speaking, everyone's looking at me. They're silent. That's just me. That's my personality. I realize some people don't do that. That's what I do, though, and so it takes a long time to get kids to adapt to that kind of structure, but it's very doable. And so, I don't know. It was my second or third year at the school.
Well, I was there probably.
Yeah, so it was my second year there. My second year, and so we're out on the marching field, and it just so happened that our marching field was located right next to the ag barn. Okay, and so if you're not familiar with with ag programs, there's a large facility that houses.
And ag is short for
agriculture, right? So there is a facility that houses goats and sheep and all other kinds of livestock, really livestock. And, it's a very successful program. The kids do great at it. It's a really exciting thing for our school. But our marching field was right next door to it. And so, we're out on the marching field and, we're getting ready for contest, and it's a big deal.
And we hear them all the time.
Yeah, and you just kind of learn to drown it out, and it's no big deal. You stop thinking about it after a while, although you do smell it, and that you never forget. But and so, I've got all the kids. I'm giving instructions. I'm up on this 12-foot tower so that I can see them. And, the field is absolutely still. The kids are listening. I'm giving instructions. And all of a sudden, there's like movement on the field. And it's not normal, like wind blowing or a kid, fidgeting or whatever. There's just like this panic that sets in on the field. And I'm looking and I'm like, what's going on? Why are the kids acting this way?
And giggling and stuff.
And they're like laughing and whatever. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see a goat. Right? And there's a goat running across the field.
Right.
And so my kids know that they're not supposed to move. They're supposed to be still at attention and as we're rehearsing and whatever. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do? We can't rehearse with a goat on the field. And then without thinking, one of my lead trumpet players puts down his trumpet and starts running.
Because he's in ag.
He was in ag. Mm-hmm. And so he starts chasing the goat. And then another kid starts chasing the goat.
Right.
And they chase him and they finally catch him.
Right.
And they carry him back to the barn. And I think if you had told me that a goat's going to run across the middle of your classroom today, I would have never expected that. Right. But you have to kind of stop, and you can't be mad about it.
And in that moment, we all just laughed.
Right.
The kids laughed.
Right.
The goat had a good time. We just stopped and we all just laughed. And I think it's important to take those moments and not be serious at that time. Just laugh because things happen and the kids enjoy it. You enjoy it, and you'll always remember those moments.
Right. And the irony is I try to run like the most perfect classroom, and everybody has a place, and everything has a moment that it's supposed to happen. You can't plan for the goat.
That should have been on a blooper reel.
Right. You cannot plan for the goat.
Right. So. The goats that come across your classroom, whether that goat be a paper ball or something, or the fire drill, you all have a goat in your classroom.
You have a goat in your classroom, and they are stubborn. So
right. So there you go. But hey, that's good. So remember the goat. I truly believe that things happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, and like our steps are ordered. And I'm glad that I believe that, because if not, the situation I'm going to tell you next would have left me in shambles, worried, and needing help. But anyway, so my first 2 years teaching, I taught in a district that had really good facilities, really good instruments, and probably one of the top band halls in the area, if not the state. And so, after I left that district, after it was a certain year, I think it was 2011, that they were like layoffs and stuff like that. And I had to leave the district because I didn't have tenure with the district, and it was not by choice of the district either. They just had to do layoffs. Anyway, so I went to this other district that they were not as, what's the word?
They didn't apportion their money the same way.
Right, exactly. But it was a big district. But anyway, so when I got the job, I was not able to see the band hall. I was just, because I actually got the job a week or two before school actually started. So I was just happy to have a job. So I was teaching band. It was one of the things I was teaching, actually. And so I found out that the school actually did have a band hall, but the band hall was being renovated, right? And so I had to start my year, and I was like in a weight room. And if you know, like, the environment of a weight room, like, it was kind of like dusty and old, and like there were pieces of equipment that you couldn't really describe what they were, but they were used at a time, and there was a lot of things that were just like in boxes and stuff like that, and the ground was dusty and it was very echoey. So that's where I had to start. Like, I went from one of the best band halls in the state of Texas. I mean, anything you could ever ask for, to this dungeon. And I call it the dungeon, right? And if you know anything about music or band, like, usually the band hall is kind of on its own, and it's like in a soundproof-ish type of environment. But this was it was in a hallway, and like across from me was the art room. Okay. And it was regular classrooms on the hallway. So when we played, it was, you could hear down the hallway. And so it was not as enjoyable for my neighbors, but they were very understanding. And I didn't have many instruments. And so it was very bad. And I was kind of in the moment. And so I didn't think about it too much. I just thought this, hey, if I went from going to the best facilities in the state of Texas to this must mean that I'm getting prepared for something big.
Right.
Something big. Right. Otherwise I would have been really depressed, and you would have to probably, come check on me or something in some facility. But anyway, at that school, so I had to teach in what I called a dungeon, and the program that I was at had about maybe 200 kids. That's the program that Pratt and I were both previously at. We had about maybe 200 kids.
Yeah,
maybe,
probably 225.
Maybe, a little bit over 200. Anyway, the kids loved us, and did what we asked them for the most part. And so I went to this school, and this was a rebuilding. Like, the band program was like restarting, because I believe the year previous they didn't have a band director or something like that. So I looked on my roll, and I was like, here we go. Okay, so how many kids is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. This is just 5 kids. Maybe it's 5 kids on each instrument, right? Okay. So my first day, these 5 kids come in. 5. I'm like, okay, where's the rest of y'all?
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's just us 5, and I think it was like 2 trombones and like 3 of them were percussionists. I'm like, this is not a band. This is y'all a group of friends that got together and got instruments, And, I was like, this is going to be a challenge. It was one of the most challenging things I've ever had to do, because, their level of reading music wasn't where it needed to be. They were interested to see what I had to say because I was different. But it was, it was very, very challenging. So I had to change their culture, because their mindset was, oh, we don't need anybody else. No. I'm like, excuse me? You need a lot of people,
right?
Right? Like, you have 5 people. So I had to change the culture of them, because that was a issue also with why the band stayed the size, and just kind of change the way they thought about music, because they were not very successful previously. So, and that change took a while, and some things you go through in your first years, and if you've been new to a school, you can attest to this, is that some things you deal with the first year that you wouldn't deal with your second and third year.
Right.
Just because the kids are going to just test you just because and say things or whatever. So one time I was telling a kid or some kid I had to have leave the room for something. This is my first year. And then, I made this mistake and opened up this can of worms. Right. I was like, okay, good. Anybody else need to leave? And one of the kids said, yeah, you. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, well, so I took care of that. But, This is the same kid that came back to me the next year and wanted to do everything I asked him to do and be in the band and stuff like that. So that was just some of the tests, and that was definitely part of the journey. And while I was going through it, I didn't really think too much about it. But now looking back, the things that I had to do, while I was there with limited resources, really made me a better teacher. It made me stronger, and it made me to develop my way of teaching, because whenever you don't have much, you have to, you're everything for them, And so Chris wasn't at the school with me, so I had him to come visit one time, and so he got to see what that was like, tell him.
Right. Well, he tells me the stories, and I'm listening, and your mind, you're like, he's exaggerating. This
because he exaggerates. That's why.
Right. So I walked in, and there were like 5 kids, and I sat down, and I was like, "This isn't a band. This is 5 kids."
Right. Is there another period? Nope. This is the only period that we have.
Right. So it was something else.
So he got a chance to see that. But those experiences, definitely help shape me. To be the teacher that I am, because those were some challenging times, and it was very uncomfortable, Right. So, but yeah, those are my times with my band of 5 and teaching in the dungeon, and they told me I should leave, but I stayed.
Okay, so it's interesting that he mentioned the kid that blurted out the thing that no one should say, but I think one thing that you've got to remember on this journey is that kids are going to say things, right? And be careful what you say, right. Because the kids, they don't listen to a lot of what you say except the things you don't really want them to hear. And that's what they listen to the most. Mm-hmm. And so I have a beautiful story about this journey that I want to share with you. So I had a student who, great kid, very talented, very smart, but didn't always get it. Like socially, kind of easily confused and there's absolutely nothing wrong with her. She's just a little bit spacey.
Right.
Is maybe for
spacey, and no filter would be appropriate.
No filter, right. Filter. So, kind of picks the wrong time to ask questions or make comments
she always picked the wrong time to ask questions.
Right. So anyways, I like to tell stories to my kids. I like them to know where I'm coming from. And so, when I first got to the high school, I understood the shoes they were in, because when I was in high school, my band director had left and I got a new band director. And so I kind of shared with the kids that, I made some wrong choices in high school, and I was upset that my old band director left. So of course I acted out and did things that I shouldn't have done.
He was ugly.
Right. But I was very quietly ugly.
He was quietly ugly.
Right. I was leading a quiet rebellion. But, we did, and we shouldn't have, but that's what kids do.
Right.
And, so looking back, I would tell them stories about how, we would be negative toward our band director and say ugly things. And I would always encourage the kids and say, I'm grateful to you that you all are trying hard and you're doing your best. And so, I told them several different stories about how I treated my band director poorly, and that I was appreciative that they were respectful and trying to do the things I asked them to do. And I always made it a point of encouragement to them. Well, one day that came back to haunt me, because I took my band to a contest, and it just so happens that one of my judges was one of my old band directors. Mm-hmm. Now, this band director that was our judge, he was not necessarily the band director that I was ugly to, because he was the assistant and I had been ugly to the head band director. But the kids knew no different, right? So he's up giving some comments to our band and telling them they did a good job and everything. And so he makes this mistake. He says, "Does anyone have any questions for me?" And immediately this little girl shoots her hand up on the front row.
Right, and see, I know this student very well, and I'm standing to the side, and I'm trying to catch her eye. Because usually she'll look at me, and I'm like, "Put your hand down."
Right.
And because she'll do it.
So at this point, I was at the liberty of this child. And so then my old director looks at her.
I remember this moment.
Right. And says, "Yes." And she said,
no.
She said, "Were you the band director that Mr. Pratt was mean to and talked about behind his back?"
And let me tell you what,
I think
he
changed
turned
colors.
all types of red, all types of red.
Right. Yeah. And thankfully that band director, that judge looked at her and said, "No, but I think I know who you're talking about."
Right.
So, you never know what the kids are going to say, but you can't be mad at her. She's just being a kid. She's just being honest, and she felt that she could have the same open relationship with that judge as she did with me. And so she learned a valuable lesson that day. We had a talk.
But you know what? There's growth because she now knows, she's grown up and she now knows when to ask these questions.
Right.
Usually she always looks at me when she has a question, and then she raises her hand and she puts it down immediately. And she knows we love her, and she knows that we just wanted to ask the question at the appropriate time. We took away her questioning card. So.
But you know what? That's a part of teaching the kids.
Yeah,
you have to teach them every situation. Everything you guys teach
everything. And she was nervous, and that's how she handled her nerves sometimes.
Right.
It's to be inappropriate.
Right.
But now Mr. Pratt was ugly as a kid.
There you go. Not all the time.
Not all the time, but sometimes.
But
yeah.
So look. So we think that the journey is part of your development.
Yeah.
Okay. It's part of your growth.
It definitely is. And I think it's important for you to know that. But I didn't realize that as I was going through it as much as I do now. And so I think it's important as you go through it, you're knowing that it's part of your development and growth. And Teach Bigger is not only an idea and a mindset, but it's a movement, and a movement which is like a journey. And it's something with forward direction and growth, with bumps and unscripted twists and turns. But it's important to understand that it does have forward movement, and hopefully that forward movement is going to bring you hope and motivation to continue to grow and to do more and to teach bigger.
Right. Yeah. So. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so we definitely have been through a journey of our own, and as you have too. So look, if you want to share your stories with us, if you want to share your journey with us, we would love to hear it. I would love to do that. So if you want to email us at info@teachbigger.com, that's info, info@teachbigger.com. We would love to hear your stories, and
so you can join the movement.
Yeah. So anyways, well, we'll look forward to seeing you again on the next podcast. So remember,
do something big.